Hey guys, it's Eric with a film photography channel. Let's take a look at the Olympus Trip 35. So this is the Olympus Trip 35. It was an extremely popular camera, selling 10 million plus copies from 1967 through 1984. Olympus named this the Trip 35 because they marketed it as a camera to take on vacation, and the 35 of course means it takes 35 millimeter film. It comes with a 40 millimeter f2.8 Olympus D Zuiko lens. The D means 4 elements. This is a Tessar design or Tessar clone type of lens with 4 elements, 4 groups, and it is a coated lens. This camera is absolutely gorgeous. It's got the classic, rangefinder style, although that's a little deceiving because it's not a rangefinder. This camera is a viewfinder camera, meaning that it doesn't have any real facility to help you focus. It just has the rangefinder, and then it's got these symbols on the lens to help you figure out, what your focus is. For example, little icons on here: a single person, 2 people, in a small group, then people like from head to toe on these little icons here, and then finally a picture of a mountain or a little icon that tells you, that's your infinity setting. And to give you a little more help in case you actually have a means by which to determine your exact distance, at the bottom of the scale, or the bottom of the lens rather, you'll see the actual feet in meters. Okay, so if you choose the first icon, which is a single person, that's basically 1 meter. That's your closest focusing distance, 1 meter / 3 feet. The 2 people in the little icon comes out to be 1.5 meters. That's about just under 8 feet, and on and on. Now, if we look at the lens, okay, the lens, you typically use this camera in the A setting, as you can see on the ring there on this lens. Now, the A setting is for automatic, obviously, and what happens there is the camera just takes over all the functions of shutter speed and f-stop, so you don't have to worry about anything. It's a true point and shoot in that regard. For flash use, you can dig into this dial a little bit more, and it says here for flash. There's people that kind of hack their way around this to use this camera in the slower shutter speeds and kind of set up their own input their own settings. This camera really, again, it's meant to be used in the A setting. Now, one thing that is a little unusual is that the camera only has 2 shutter speeds, 1/40th and 1/200th of a second. Now, what the camera will do is figure out the correct shutter speed, the correct aperture, and just let you take the photo there without any fuss. It just makes it really, really easy. It also, like a lot of cameras of this type, will have a shutter lock. You see, if I put the lens cap on and it's not receiving any light, it won't let you take the picture. So that'll be true if you're out of the exposure range with the Trip 35, it won't let you take the picture. So it's kind of a smart system. So you can, in fact, manually enter your f-stop. When you take it away from the A mode there, you can go ahead and manually enter your f-stop, and just so you know, you're gonna be operating at the 1/40th of a second shutter speed. This mode is meant for flash, like it says on the lens there, but you can in fact just use it for available light photography without the flash attached. Beware that the little safety thing, the little red flag, is not working. If you look, I've got the lens cap on, and the camera will still go ahead and trip the shutter. So for safety, you should always keep it in the A mode until you consciously make the decision to leave the A mode, so you can dial in your own shutter speed. Or I'm sorry, dial in your own custom f-stop. There's f22. I'll open it up a little bit. You see the 4-bladed aperture blades, and it works okay. You know, it's pretty decent for what it's meant for. I mean, this is not a camera that you're going to take some gorgeous bokeh, you know, front, you know, out of background out of focus type of pictures. That won't happen on this camera. And I'll tell you why. Because the limited shutter speeds, the fastest shutter speed being 1/200th of a second, simply means that if you're in even moderate daylight, even like on a cloudy day, the lens is going to have to shut down in order to get to the correct exposure. All right, let's see if actually I can show you this here. All right, if you look at the aperture blades there, you see, let's see if I can, yeah, you see the aperture blades opening, and that's because we're indoors. But if you, I probably can't do it, but if you point it at a strong source of light, they're going to open less and less, right? If we were outside, although there's window light here, if we were outside, it would stay at probably right around here or right around there, just in order to make up for the slow shutter speed. If it had like 1/500th of a second, it would, you know, it would open up things in terms of the type of photos you could take, and maybe like blurring the background out. But now the way the camera is set up, it does have a filtering, so you can put a filter on there, but then you run into how accurate the selenium cell is, because if it gets too dark, then the selenium cell kind of just bugs out and it doesn't really react very well. It's not like a powered light meter that'll give you, you know, nuanced readings. You have your shutter release here with a threaded cable release socket. You have a simple hot shoe that will take just a basic flash, and your film rewind is right there. It's, you know, it's all basic stuff. The film advance is kind of nice. I like that it's you know, it's got a little thumb wheel there, just like, you know, a couple of turns is all it takes to advance the film, and the film advances perfectly in terms of the gap between each frame. I focus on that because you know, on my film scanner, you feed the film into it, and if you have varying degrees of width between each film frame, then you end up, you know, with scans that are overlapping and not properly lined up, which becomes a pain. So it's good that this camera, like a lot of cameras, but you know, this camera in particular does really good in terms of the gap. All right, to open up the back, there's a little pull down here. You just do that, and you have nice clean lines in there, typical of Olympus engineering. No surprise there. And this does go up here. The film rewind does go up just to insert the film. It's not for anything else. And it's simple enough to load. Nothing out of the ordinary here. Nothing really noteworthy at all here. And at the bottom, you see Made in Japan, and the film rewind release button right here, just to when you're done with your photos, you can start rewinding. Olympus has these nice big clear windows for their film counter. I love that. Nice big arrow and very clear numbers that you can read in the broad daylight or even in dimmer situations. So that's always nice. The viewfinder is okay, all right? And by that I mean it's a good enough size. You know, it's probably a little bigger than you might expect from an inexpensive compact camera like this. But in there you see just a standard frame line for your 40mm lens, and you have these little cutout lines that are your parallax correction lines for when you get around that 3-foot range. The offset between the lens and the viewfinder start to make a difference in how your photos are framed. So the parallax correction lines are what you use to frame your photo when you get around that 3 to, I guess, 5-foot range and you're focusing. That's when parallax becomes an issue. Nice, tiny, compact camera. You can see how small it is. I don't want to drop it. It's very similar in size to the Olympus 35 DC and a lot of other small cameras like the, for example, Minolta Hymatic 7S2, that's a tiny little camera, about the same size as this. It's a little smaller than a Canon QL17G3 that I've featured on my channel. A little bit smaller and lighter than that type of camera. And this Olympus 35 DCA definitely feels heavier than this. The Trip 35 is nice and light. This one is a little heavier. You can definitely feel the difference. I want to put it down now. Just to point out a couple of things. If you look at the lens, how far it's recessed in there, it's kind of has its own built-in lens hood. I don't know if that's by design or that's just the way it worked out. But this f2.8 40mm, if sun is hitting it from the side, there's just no way it'll create flare because the lens is just kind of too far in there. And you know, that's just a nice little feature built into the camera. I'm not sure if they designed it like that or not. And last thing, in terms of the body, the shoe there, again, it's a basic shoe. You also have a PC plug here for other types of flashes. In terms of using this camera from day to day, I've had kind of like some mixed results with it. Okay, so I've taken, you know, probably, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 rolls. Now I've had this camera about 2 or 3 months. I've taken several rolls with it, and there's times where I get these blurry photos. And when I say blurry, I'm talking about motion blur, not lens blur. The lens is pretty sharp. If you can take the photo correctly, which is kind of counter to the whole narrative of this camera. This is the Trip 35. It's a tourist camera. It's supposed to be easy to use. You pick it up, you put your little symbols in there, and then you just take the photo, and everything's supposed to be good. But if you're not careful, and unfortunately you do have to be a little careful when you use this camera, because if you're not careful, you're going to get a blurry photo. And, I'm thinking, because that happened to me a lot. Half of my roll, probably close to half of the roll, came out blurry. I'll say 1 in 3. So let's say 30% of the photos I took with this camera were blurry with motion blur. And so it's started to bug me, because I've liked this camera I've looked at this camera for a long time, and I finally got around to taking it, and it's been so highly reviewed. Everybody talks so good about how the lens, how sharp the lens is and everything. And so it was a little disappointing to get all these blurry photos. So I looked into it, and I started on Flickr, and I'm looking on Flickr and trying to see what other people's photos were coming out like. And I started to see a lot of blurry photos. But people being people, I saw this video, actually 2 videos on YouTube, saying what a great camera it is, and the photos were fantastic. And then they show their photos off, and the photos have that same motion blur. So I'm like, well, why are people bragging about the photos when they're clearly these blurry, blurred out photos because of camera shake? All right, so how is it that these photos are coming out blurry? Well, I'll tell you. If you use ASA 100 or even 200 speed film in this camera, even outdoors, you run into the chance of this camera throttling itself down to the 1/40th of a second shutter speed, which means, and you won't know that the camera's using that slower shutter speed, and you're not necessarily being careful because, hey, you're outdoors. You're thinking it's a faster shutter speed, or maybe you're not thinking about that at all, right? And you take the photo, and you're using the slow shutter speed because it's ASA 100 or 200 speed film, and you're maybe catching some shade, some shadows in your photo. Like, for example, I took a photo. It was broad daylight, sunny day. Some trees were a major part of my photo, and in those trees were a bunch of shade, a bunch of shadows. So this camera picked up on that. It was, I guess, darker than lighter, the scene was, and it went to 1/40th of a second. Probably had to shut down the f16, f22. But in any case, I ended up with a blurry photo because of the slower shutter speed, even though it's outdoors, even though it was nice and bright outside. Yeah, so that is kind of a odd thing to have to think about, have to worry about when you're using what's supposed to be like this simple point-and-shoot camera. And it could be just from the era that it was designed. I mean, the original design actually only had 1/200th of a second shutter speed, and the newer ones had the 2 shutter speeds. And you could probably, let me see if I can fool the camera into the slower speed. You can hear the difference pretty easily. You hear that? It's like two distinct. And if you go here with more light, then you hear just a single. So it's like versus. So that was 1/40th, of course, and then 1/200th. But yeah, in any case, that's something you actually have to watch out for, unless you just throw some ASA 400 speed film in the camera, and then that no longer becomes an issue. And by the way, this camera's ASA ranges from 50 to 400. That was a pretty major upgrade at the time, because 400 speed film had just come out when this camera was designed. And so for it to be able to use the 400 speed film was a big deal. So if you throw 400 speed film, this camera becomes like a whole nother camera, much easier to use. It took me several rolls to figure that out. It's like, why am I getting these blurry photos? But in any case, 400 speed film, now all of a sudden you've got a camera that you can rely on when you're outdoors. It's vacation mode. You're taking photos. You know, you can take photos as you want. I mean, you know, this thing at infinity, which is your typical vacation photos, are not going to be, you know, necessarily up close. But, you know, if they are, then you've got a means by which to focus closer. But if, you know, most of your photos are going to be not portraits, but maybe family photos standing in front of some beautiful, you know, Taj Mahal, the Washington Monument, the White House, whatever. So yeah, so infinity, ISO ASA 400 speed film, 1/200th of a second. Because of the faster film, the camera's pretty much going to be locked into the 1/200th of a second speed, and you're going to get nice, sharp photos. And that's really what this camera is meant to do. It's meant to be used on A in the auto mode, and it's meant to be used with 400 speed film. You use slower speed film at your peril, okay? Because everything becomes harder with the you know, the slower speed film. You're just so much more. It's so much more likely that you'll end up with a blurred out photo. But all that having been said, because of that, I'm not crazy about this camera like I thought I would be. I like the concept. I like that it's very light, and it is significantly lighter than the other cameras that are pretty much the same size. As long as the photos come out well, I'm not really worried that much about how many shutter speeds it has. As long as, you know, from the nice Zuiko lens, you get nice photos. Not too worried about that. It's, at the end of the day, it's all about the results. This is a good camera for somebody who's never picked up a film camera, or, you know, maybe only ever took photos with their phone or something, and they want to try out film. It's inexpensive, about $100. You know, of course, it's going to vary on condition. Very well made. I've read some people that had issues with or questions, really, not issues, about light seals. And for the world, I can't figure out what they're talking about, because this camera has tongue and groove setting or inserts right here. So the back goes pretty deep into these grooves when you close it, and yeah, you might hear a tiny amount of play. I mean, you can't really even see it moving, but you can hear the play in there. But the grooves are so far inside there, you're not going to get any light leaks. And again, this doesn't even have any seals in it. It's just the bare metal, the again, tongue and groove setup, and zero light leaks. So don't worry about that. Again, I read a few articles where people are saying, hey, should the CLA include seals? And I don't think it was even designed for seals. Anyway, so who's this camera for? I don't know. It's for somebody who loves film cameras. I mean, it is a beautiful camera. It is relatively easy to use. Again, once you put that 400 speed film in there. If you're going to get too technical or have, try to do too much, then this isn't the camera for you. Again, it's limited with the shutter speeds. It doesn't have a bulb setting. And just about every photo you take is going to end up with a small aperture, which means you're not going to have a blurry background almost ever. You know, I mean, if you get in like a 3 feet close and it's not like a super bright day or something like that, then you might be able to eke out a little bokeh. Maybe even if you put some type of filter, like a yellow filter or something, that'll they'll force the lens to open up, you might end up with, you know, a more open lens that may allow some out of focus background. I mean, it is an f2.8 after all, so there is that possibility. But the way the camera's designed, without that faster shutter speed, it's going to be really difficult to blur out the background. Okay, that's just you know, the nature of the design. Now, all that being said, $100 for this camera. Okay, paid $100 for this camera, paid $50 for this camera. I'm sure, you know, and this is the Olympus 35DC. It's, you know, it's a camera that I've done a review on, and I've also done a comparison video comparing it to other similar cameras. So check those out if you haven't already. This is a much more sophisticated camera. It came out later, but I mean, just looking at the face of it, this is a 1.7 lens, 40 millimeter also. It's got a much better light meter, but it's a powered light meter. It's got a backlight compensation built in. It's got a self-timer built in, you know, and it's relatively similar in size, okay? It actually looks like a little shorter camera in terms of its width and all that, but it's definitely got a better lens. I mean, the lens in the 35DC is a magnificent lens. It's a 6-element, 40 millimeter f1.7. And I haven't checked the prices on this camera lately, but I paid $50 for it 3 years ago, maybe. I don't know. You know, all film cameras are getting more expensive now, so this may have gone up to 100 or something. Who knows? But you know, when you consider the two, this has a rangefinder that you can get pinpoint focusing without any fuss. It does have up to 1/500th of a second shutter speed. Like a lot of cameras in this category, you'll see a camera like this with a 40 mil 6-element lens from Minolta, from Canon, from, you know, just about every major manufacturer, you know, back in the film era. So it just begs the question: is like, why get this when you can get this? Yeah, the 10 million of these things sold, so it does have its appeal. People like it for a reason. It's not, you know, so let's not overlook that. I mean, they sold a lot of them, but, you know, again, I think that this camera is just far better in terms of its usage. And it's just as simple. I mean, it's a camera that you just dial up the shutter speed. And again, you've got up to 500th, and the camera will do the rest. Dial up the shutter speed, focus, and you're done. And then you'll know exactly if you're in focus. And you can get really good bokeh out of this camera. The light meter is right here. So if you put a filter over it, the light meter will compensate automatically. So just to put that out there, I mean, this is a review about the Trip 35, but it's good to know, I think, what your options may be, you know, at this price point, and especially given that both cameras are very similar in size, although the Olympus 35DC, because of the bigger lens, I guess, it's definitely heavier. I don't know if you consider it significantly heavier, but it's definitely heavier than the Trip 35. Trip 35 with the little wristband, and this isn't the original. The original is a black wristband. This is probably a generic wristband that the previous owner bought for it. But yeah, it's a nice, fun camera. Once I figured out that why the pictures were blurring, it's a camera that I have no problem taking out, you know, for an afternoon with the family and just, you know, snap away, and expect nice results from it. It's a nice, sharp lens. It resolves really well. It's got a great coating. You get great color from it. So again, you know, for the right price, this is a great film camera to have. Just remember, you're missing self-timer and bulb, for example. There's no bulb shutter speed on this. So you're missing some stuff, but then you can call that a little bit more advanced features, where, you know, this isn't the purpose of this camera. This camera is just made for, you know, for tourist type photos. Okay, so hopefully, guys, you got some good information there. This is the Olympus Trip 35. Now that you know about it, go out and get one. This is Eric with the Film Photography Channel. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.